Well, hello, my fellow nerds. It is Kristi. It is Sunday, and so it is time for Weekend Winters. How are you doing? Weekend Winters, even. How are y'all doing? I'm doing well. A little bit sleepy. I ran a D&D session last night, which went fine, but that's like a lot of work to do a one-shot. A lot of uptake for 3 hours. But anyway, it's all good. It's all good. I'm exercising my brain. Oof, oof, oof. And we're going to do some more of that this morning. So it's been a while, it's been a minute, as the kids say, that we have done any proper social science philosophy. Mostly because I read this section and I was like, I can't deal with you, Max. Max, back off. Like, you're too much. I can't handle you right now. So took a break, went on vacation, mucked about with some other things, finally got myself organized, and here we are. So we are back on the social science philosophy nerd train. Woo woo, choo choo, come on along. Let's see how this goes. Now, before we start, there was one thing I do want to do, which is to sort out, okay, I want to get the chat up. Even if I can't get y'all in the one window, I can get you in another one. Hello, ahoy. Hey, A to the K, how you doing? I won't be able to have you on the screen with the notes because that's just like, I need another monitor. I have too many, I have too many things. So I'm going to present this on here. I will try to keep an eye on your comments on the side, but I am trying to practice a technique for presenting information in a webinar setting. It's not a perfect representation of it, but I am implementing the advice of David K. Phillips, I think his name is, about how to avoid death by PowerPoint. And so I'm presenting the information in such a way that it should be easier for you to identify what's important. There's still too much text on this, but I basically started this at 11 o'clock this morning and I finished at 12:30. So I did 90 minutes of prep time for this, creating these slides and also understanding the content. So that was my, instead of going for a run, like this is what I do on a Sunday. All right, so let's go ahead and get nerdy with it. Now, just to remind you where we were in the topics. We went like, oh, okay, here we go. Today was so much fun for me when it comes to video game updates. Oh yeah, was there a lot of cool stuff that got announced, DN fan? All right. Now, we're going to talk. Today, we're going to talk about Max Weber. Very important, influential contributor to sciences and also to the philosophy of science. The way we approach things. So in this section, this week, also next week, when we look at, so this week we're going to look at Weber's discussion of the objects of social science and what he thought. Again, he lived from 1864 to 1920. So we are going to, these are very early days of the philosophy of science, and we've already looked at the developments in positivism and empiricism, and that focused on the measurable behavior observable behavior focus. And Weber's going to move beyond that. He's going to have a different perspective of what the objects of social scientific inquiry should look like. So this week, we're going to look at Weber's discussion of the objects of social science, which, by the way, so just to give you a sense of this, right, that section that I'm showing you right now, which you can't see, because it's all probably way too blown out with what lights-wise, but that discussion is 3 pages in change. We'll just call it 3 pages because it starts here, right? So 1, 2, 3 pages. From these 3 pages of text, I did 16 different slides. That's how dense this material is. So, 16 slides to go through point by point the content they cover in a page, basically 3 pages. So next time we will look at Weber's methodology, understanding an ideal types. You've probably heard before of an ideal type. It's a very common phrase to use when talking about an example of something, like, oh, that's an ideal type. I'm not saying it exists, but we can imagine it for what it is. Then we're going to look 3 weeks on Weber on objectivity and value freedom. And then we're going to move on to a different topic. We're going to look at phenomenology, which is not Weber. So we're going to look, it says here, Weber was not a phenomenologist, yet he was concerned with the actor's point of view. Okay, I guess we're going to look at Weber from a non-phenomenological point of view, but also look at, what they say, the philosophical foundation for instrumental rationality. And then we're going to go into Schultz, apparently, and Schultz's work on rational choice theory. So let's just go one step at a time, because there's a lot to cover here. There is a lot to get nerdy about. And we are going to dive right in. So I'm also going to, like I said, try to have a look today. Update announcements. I should say Nintendo gave a date for the big ACNH update and Minecraft Wild update. All right, so gamers are loving it today. I'm a little bit disappointed, not on a completely different point of different thing. I was supposed to get Fizban's Treasury of Dragons this week because it was supposed to come out the 19th. But no, I have to wait longer. I'm in Europe, so I'm gonna have to wait even longer. So I'm sad. My updates did not come this month. Although I'm being really super greedy because I just got Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is brilliant and really, really good. I'm really enjoying that a lot. Anyway, but we're going to stick to nerdy stuff. All right, let's look at Max Weber. And again, we're talking about the way that people were thinking about the philosophy of science, the late 1800s to the early part of the 20th century. So the late 19th century to the early 20th century. These are still early days, right? We're still talking about that tension between rationalism and empiricism, positivism, and approaches. We looked deeper at positivism. Now we're going to go deeper into more of the rationalist perspective. Weber was a neo-Kantian, and I'm just going to leave that out there. I don't have time to go into Kant and neo-Kantians, but just as a term, as a framework for other people whom we will discuss as neo-Kantians or not, this perspective that he was coming from was, he thought that the focus for what he termed the human sciences or the spiritual sciences, which just makes me go, the positivist in me just goes, is what separates it and really makes it distinct from focusing on positivism and behavior is that its focus for the study of human beings is to investigate forms of intuition and categories of understanding. We're really moving beyond what we can merely observe and document from a positivist perspective and trying to almost do a causal connection between people's actions and their intentions and their aspirations. Right? So we're moving away from observation into rationality, which is way more vague and way more difficult to quantify. That's why people sometimes like positivism and they like the empirical side, and the quanti side is because you can count things and you can make things discrete and try to separate out influences. And is it always a perfect representation of the world? No, but it's kind of close, right? So there are pros and cons of both of these approaches, and you should be familiar with them. All right, so what is this? Authors want to note in this section, right, as we move forward, we talk about Weber and instrumental rationality. The perspective that they're coming from, also the neo-Kantians, is this link between understanding and narrative. Right, how people make sense of themselves in the stories they tell, and also making us understanding the story, the sense they make of their narratives. The importance of values and value choices. So it's less about understanding, documenting what people do, and more trying to understand what it is that people are trying to achieve. What are people's intentions behind their actions? That's what, from an instrumental rationality point of view, is the thing that's of interest. It's not whether or not they do X or Y. It's why they do X or Y. And it's also, I'm going to have to reduce also individual subjectivity and collective objectivity, and how how collective objectivity interact with individual subjectivity. You're going to see this a lot where I I abbreviate individual, because bloody was me doing a vocalized pause. I'm trying to get away from doing ums and ahs, so I think that the yada 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 is my new We'll see how that goes. I'm working on trying to not do verbalized pauses, and that is something I do need to practice. Individual subjectivity, individual in these notes will occasionally be reduced down to indie or individ, just because I wanted to try to keep things on one line of text, keep the number of words down. All right, so we now have that understanding of where we're locating Weber in the larger body of thought. And thought in Weber's perspective, he thought of social sciences as best focused on meaning. That's what humans are unique for. This is something that there might be meaning and intention in other species, but it's much easier for us to understand and relate and predict actions based on meaning in human beings, right? In particular, Weber wanted to understand especially how individuals and how shared cultural, especially individuals, like the focus is on here individuals and the meaning of individuals, or the meaning individuals put upon something, but also how shared cultural meanings, the framework in which the set of values you grow up with, how those affect your individual choices. And so in terms of the way that, don't use the word "so," Kristi, in terms of how Weber thinks about the social world functioning, Benton and Crabe offer the categorization that we can think of Weber as an ontological individualist. In other words, ontologically, what is the world made up of? The social world is made up of individuals who are acting together. And I also, by the way, if you see typos like here, together, that's just because I'm doing my notes in a German slide thing where I don't have English proofing. So I just, I have typos in my slides because I did them an hour and a half before I came on here. So apologies for together. Ontological individualist is the way that we can classify Weber in terms of his perspective of how society works. It's individuals who are acting collectively together. And to expand on this more clearly, Weber didn't have a sense of collective social entities having an influence on people's values and lives. So for instance, class, while he would have acknowledged some cultural values of class, we wouldn't acknowledge it as a causal force. He wouldn't see the role for collective social entities like class factors having as an important a role in people's decision-making as would, say, like a Marxist. He's more on the individualist side than on the collectivist side. Also, in Weber's understanding, there are no social structures or overarching social phenomenon that are imposing upon individuals. We are, and again, there's a whole bunch of critiques we can have of this, right? And later people did. But these are the starting points. However, I have to say, my initial impression of Weber is that he is a good example of the way in which the critique of science being having problems with whiteness and maleness and Westernness really does come to the fore, because his perspective on the world here, I would say, in a critical way, critiquing way, very much comes from a position of someone who has a lot of agency. His experience as a white, educated, wealthy man of social standing in Europe had a profound effect on his understanding of how other people could exercise agency. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying, like, a lot of this just kind of strikes me the wrong way, because his location, I think his socio-location really made him overestimate other people's autonomy. Anyway, I don't want to get into that yet. We're just going to try to get through this. No social structures or overarching social phenomenon that are imposing on individuals. Next slide, please. In terms of the way that Weber saw the world, the quote that I pulled out of the book is, if only individuals... what? Page 76. Kristi, what the hell are you writing here? Like, it made sense because I had to reduce down these notes. Let's see what he said. All right. We'll go to this page. We are on page 76. There is no collective social entity such as class. One might reasonably ask, why, if there are only individuals interacting, can we make sense of society at all? At the center of this answer is... Weber's answer to this is that we can make sense of social life because humans act rationally. I think I've got... Okay, so it's above that. We might describe it as an ontological individualist. The world studied by the social sciences is made up of individuals interacting together. There is no collective social entity except such as class, except in the limited sense that we consider shortly. Nor can we talk about social structures or overarching social phenomena which impose themselves on individuals. Oh, I think it's this idea here that it's only through individuals that we can make sense of a social society. I think that's what my notes are meant to be. You have to locate society in individuals, in actual human beings, and so it is less about invisible social structures, and most focus on looking at how individuals behave. And whether we can make sense of social life, if you were to ask Weber, can we make sense of social life? He would say, yes, we can. Like, social life can and does make sense because human beings act rationally. Now, rationality here is going to be something we define quite narrowly, and I will provide a definition of instrumental rationality near the end. But I think it's quite important that when we talk about rationality, either in a philosophical sense or in terms of the social sciences, that we don't just rely on a lay common conception or definition of the idea of rationality, because rationality can have very precise meanings, for very precise definitions, and we're going to look at the definition of instrumental rationality. So put a little asterisk there. In terms of what he thinks rationality is, how do you define rationality? It says rationality, it's a series of classifications wherein Weber defines, quote, the proper object of social science. I can read it word for word here. One might reasonably ask, why, if there are only individuals interacting, can we make any sense of society at all? At the center of Weber's answer to this is that we can make sense of a social life because human beings act rationally. What he means by rationality emerges through a series of classifications in which he defines the proper object of the social sciences more and more closely. This hermeneutical or interpretivist tradition is often seen as the main and radical alternative to positivism, and the two are seen as mutually exclusive. Overall, we, the authors, will be arguing that both approaches have their place, and although we might argue about which philosophical presuppositions and consequent methods are appropriate in any particular case, we are not faced with an either-or choice between the two. Okay, let's dig deeper into this notion of rationality in Weber. In Weber's classification, we deal, by the way, in continua. We're not talking about, when we're talking about like X and Y, it's not a matter of the quantification obsession of positivists, like the positivist in me, where we go, okay, this is where we have this cutoff, and it might be arbitrary, but at least we're being clear about it. We're just going to define it, and other people can define it in other ways, but this is where we're going, and we're just going to be transparent, and this is going to be our cutoff. There is less of that need for defining absolutes. There's more comfort with ambiguity, right? Think of the merging of behavior into meaningful action without demarcation. The possibility, for instance, that I could be on this stream with you and I'm blinking a lot. I just start blinking. This might be because I'm in a dusty room. It might be like my behavior might be simply a function of biology, of my eyes doing what they're meant to do when I'm in a dusty room. However, if I'm under, so the conditions in that case, the blinking would not have a significant meaning. If I was in a deposition and I was being asked questions I knew were at the heart of whatever the case was, and the way that I chose my words could impact people's interpretation of what I was saying, I might blink a lot as I'm thinking because I'm nervous and I'm trying to formulate the words. In this social situation, the behavior is exactly the same. However, its meaning will definitely have a different spin because we know how humans behave when they're nervous. And it might be that it's just dusty in the deposition room. It could be that I'm really nervous. And in this way, it's helpful to not cling to that. Is it an X or is it a Y? Is it a 1 or a 2? Is it a 0? Is it a possess, not possess? There's a room for ambiguity here, that behaviors can be understood, maybe not perfectly, but with a context that is plausible based on how we know people behave. All right. By the way, I'm going to check in. I'm going to check in on the chat because I just realized I'm ignoring y'all. So let's put up the chat here and see what y'all have to say. I'm gonna pump it up, y'all. Make it bigger. All right. Oh, by the way, I have that Harry Mack freestyle in my head. Da, 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 da. So I'm like all kinds of funky today. Right. Hey, Michael Mistaken, welcome. Good to see you. A to Decay, hello, hello, hello. I think that's it. Most of you are all just nerding out and listening, I would assume, which is fine. That's what you can do. I'm here to give free knowledge. I'm here dropping social science knowledge on you. All right. Let us continue and see what comes up next. All right. Meaningful action versus behavior. I already set this up in my previous slide because I knew this was coming. So in a lot of ways, this is anticipated. But we start with this assumption about meaningful action and the focus on meaningful action, contrasting that with observable behavior. Right. I did already the blinking one, so we can skip this. Weber isn't interested in random or biological or functional, let's call them purposeless actions. If I move my hair out of my face, I mean, I guess you could also like maybe interpret that as meaningful again if I'm nervous or whatever else. But the idea here is that he's not interested in all behaviors. He's interested in meaningful social action. And the definition of meaningful social action is important. It's not just whatever you think it is. He has a bit of a clear definition. Hold on just 1 second. I had to burp and I didn't want to do it on air. Speaking of burping, where's my coffee? Oh man, can you guys, hey, I need my coffee for this. Are y'all ready? Can you just hang out for a second? I'm gonna nip you over to the music. I'm gonna get my coffee. Kristi needs her coffee. So we're all gonna take a quick break and I'm gonna come back so I can caffeinate. So give me 2 minutes and we'll be back with you in just a second. Oh, cool, there's some music. And back. My last coffee of the day. So we are caffeinated up and ready to go. Yeah, make a hot chocolate. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Rabble, rabble, coffee break, rabble, rabble. Oh, you guys crack me up. All right. Oh, you have a shy cat laying on your chest? Ah, yes. Stay right where you are. Cat cuddles. That's lovely. Absolutely lovely. All right, we were talking about meaningful social action. So let's get back to it. It's so exciting. Oh my God, how sexy is this stuff? All right, so meaningful social action. A key component of it is directed toward another human being. Now, yeah, intentionality, I guess, if directed at another human being, I guess this is what the purpose of this part of the definition is to, let's say, exclude things that people do without intention. But there's a difference between, so again, I guess I'm critiquing Weber because I'm too much of a postmodernist and positivist to just present it without any comment. But my concern about this is, I'm sure this will be anticipated by other people, it's not just about intentionality and directing it to human beings. People's actions can have knock-on effects, whether or not. But anyway, we're talking about, I guess we're focusing it on the individual, right? So Weber wants to focus in on the individual, so we're going to focus in on intentionality. I have a harder time. I have a much harder time, I'm going to be honest, with interpretivism than I do with positivism, and that's just a bias from my own backgrounds. So take it with throw some quotes up here or whatever else that Kristi is maybe not the most passionate, charitable defender of instrumental and of interpretivism. But anyway, let's get back. We're going to try to understand Weber, right? We're going to go back to a 20th century mindset, right? Back when Einstein was, making people, just freaking them out by predicting, the sun, the light from the sun would be pulled by, the light from the sun would be pulled by gravity during an eclipse, right? That was mind-blowing stuff in the 1920s. Weber classified 4 types of meaningful social action. 2 of them are based in, I think, the personal is what they describe in the book. And again, his perspective, I think, looking back on it, is very much a consequence of his time and also his research interest. Because things that he picked out that were important for his research don't always translate to a secular, because he's interested in religion, into a secular context. He thought that one of the things that people would engage in meaningful social action in order to accomplish would be the personal satisfaction of the traditional, that it's always been done this way, and finding apparently some satisfaction in the continuity of behavior over time. Again, this is a pretty weak one. I don't even think that the authors they don't do too much to step up to defend this one. So I'll just read here from page 77. Weber goes on to distinguish 4 different types of meaningful social action. The first 2 are distinguished by the fact that they are carried out primarily for the satisfaction of the individual, for the satisfaction that they bring, not to achieve any purpose in the world. All right. Okay, so we're already okay. So this is traditional, they write, action, which the first is traditional action, which we carry out because we have always carried it out. If someone asks me why I'm doing this, I say because it has always been done. This is rare in contemporary society, although there are elements of it in everyday life, perhaps in some family routines which we have a long life and bring a sense of comfort. I guess the way that I think about this, if you wanted to, I remember my mom asking, we had this conversation ages and ages ago, both when my maternal grandparents were both still alive. And my grandmother, who, was raised and was a practicing, I thought, Roman Catholic, when they came to her to talk about like what was going to happen after we die, she's like, I think when you're dead, you're dead. I think there's nothing after life. And my mom's jaw just dropped. And she said, but Ma, you go to church every Sunday. And my grandmother looked at her and said, well, that's what you're supposed to do. So that to me is kind of like, I don't know that there's personal satisfaction in doing things for the sake of tradition. Again, this traditional practice brings a lot of benefit if you're a male in a patriarchy. Doing things how they've always been done skews towards empowering men, giving agency, and in this case to cis men in a crude, like, heteronormative binary worldview. And of course, then if you are being empowered through tradition and ritual, well, yeah, then of course you're going to like that. It's going to reinforce your sense of identity and authority. But at what expense? Anyway, I'm fighting with Weber, and he can't defend himself, so I should stop. Right. The next one is what drives, or what a type of meaningful social action are affectual. These are actions based on emotion. These can also be in that gray area of borderline rational versus borderline irrational. If I'm having an argument with a friend of mine and I lose my temper and I shout at her, then Weber would say me losing my temper and giving way to my emotions is not an example of me acting rationally. However, if I'm having an argument with my friend, and I just say, you know what, I need to walk off. I need to walk away. Like we need to, like, give me 10 minutes. I need to go walk around the block, have a think, and come back before I say anything. That calm self in Weber's classifications would be an affectual act, a meaningful social act that you did in order to make sure you have good relations with another human being. There's a whole lot of squishy things around this, but we're going to keep moving on. The third type is valuing. These are actions oriented to an ultimate value. These, now again, there's all kinds of get-out-free clauses with Weber. So values that we choose don't have to be rational, but our pursuit of those values would be considered rational because we are engaging in a behavior that is designed to achieve that goal. Right? Let's say that again. Your values don't have to be rational in order for your behaviors in pursuit of them to be seen as a valuing, meaningful social action in Weber. The example given in the book is Christianity. It doesn't necessarily make any sense, let's say, to go to church or do confession, all those sorts of things. But if you believe that those actions are a necessity in order to get you to heaven, then going to church and doing confession and doing penance, again, I'm speaking from my Roman Catholic perspective, are all meaningful social acts that you could look at. Though, religious beliefs are not rational, but religious acts in pursuit of those beliefs or acting in accordance with those beliefs or values are. And the last one are practical acts toward concrete, achievable ends. There's ambiguity, as there seems to just characterize all of instrumental rationality. Here, we can think about practical ends as being a good or a concrete, achievable end. The example they give in the book is education. I personally think that it is sufficient. The necessary and sufficient condition for education is that it makes people more aware of how things work in the world, how to function in the world, and hopefully, most importantly, how to research things themselves. I think we don't do enough teaching people how to become their own teachers, but that's a different rant for a different day. Another person can pursue education. Right? So you can have a student who is pursuing education because they love to learn. They just want to understand a topic. They're passionate about it. They want to immerse themselves in it. They want to make contributions to it. It's just like their jam. Right? That is a concrete, achievable end for pursuing education. Another person can pursue the exact same goal of education because they want to make big money. Like they would just want to be in an industry where they're going to be an attorney, or they're going to be a mechanic, whatever it is it's going to be that they're good at, or they like, or their parents make them choose, in order to have a comfortable way of life. That's a very practical. There's no emotional, aesthetic, cultural, spiritual benefit if you just see education as a means to an end, as a tool, learning a skill set so you can perform a function, so you can make a lot of money, so then you can get what you want. So again, these practical acts are a little bit vague. Or not vague. They have room for squish. They have room for squish. For Weber, if we wanted to look at the necessary and sufficient conditions, mostly necessary, but also sometimes sufficient probably, to Weber as to what the true object, what is the true object of social science? What should social science be looking at in order to understand human beings and society? And his answer would be that we need to look at things that are meaningful, that are rational, and that are social actions. Let me see if I can actually just pull up that chapter and read out that section on its own, because I feel like this needs a little bit of elaboration. Let me see. The true object of sociology, this is from page 78. The true object of sociology and of the social sciences generally is, then, meaningful, rational, social action, action to which the actor gives a meaning, directed to other people, intended to achieve practical purposes in the world. I think I continue on with this in the next one. Yeah, there we go. There it is. Therefore, what we mean by instrumental rationality, since it is the use of rationality in order to bring about change in the world in the interest of the actors, an actor gives the action meaning, it is directed toward others, and it is intended to achieve a practical purpose in the world. They write, this distinguishes the conception of rationality from other conceptions of rationality, which can be found in the social sciences, and which will be discussed in the following chapters. So when we think about Weberian notions of instrumental rationality, we should associate it with with meaningful, rational, and social actions by an individual, that the actor gives an action meaning, the action is directed towards others, and it's intended to achieve a practical purpose in the world. Now, I'm going to wrap this up because this is, end of notes. This is the last slide. And thus endeth the lesson in a few seconds. All right. I think it is good context that the authors provide us here about what Weber was interested in. Because when you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And Weber was interested in asking or answering specific questions, not only about what is the proper object of inquiry for the social sciences, but his spin was world religions. And this we can see ties into his pointing to tradition as traditional behaviors or actions. Traditional social actions, meaningful social actions, getting personal satisfaction is a way for him to explain why people continue to practice religions. And it's very, I think, niche because, I already had this whole thing about patriarchy. Got a big problem with this stuff, but I'm going to try to leave that out and just say the reason why his traditional personal satisfaction doesn't work in the secular world is because really in the West, especially, I can't speak to the other, I'm not saying other places don't value this, but in the West, since kind of industrialization, we have, as cultures in Western Europe, the Americas, the English-speaking world, right? I'll just generalize it in that way, put more of an emphasis on what is new and innovative and, fresh, as opposed to, if you think about up until that time, really, it was a complete new way of thinking for Westerners. Again, I'm just going to focus on Western Europe, a little bit, I guess, on the East too, but mostly Western Europe and America and Canada and Australia here because that's all I can intelligently speak to. But from the Greeks and the Romans, that whole time, knowledge that was ancient had value because it was ancient and it had been tested and proven through thousands of years of application. Somehow they thought that just having something in a book that people did over and over again proved that it was effective. And there was more value given to older knowledge. More respect and reverence was given to something that was 1,000 years old than 10 days old. And that value structure, that way of thinking about what is important and why it's important, is antithetical to how we think about things today. Today, we're like, is it faster? Is it lighter? Is it smaller? Is it very simple? Like, give me the new thing. Give me the new thing. I want the new thing. That's generally how we are today. And that's why this notion of getting meaning from something that you've done, and the meaning comes from just doing it, doesn't make sense in a secular society. I think it only makes sense in a religious context. That's just my opinion. But with this, so he was looking at trying to understand the sociological history of world religions. Okay, we're just going to get so much white male privilege coming up here. But Weber argued that the difference between Western Europe and North American capitalism, why this society developed capitalism, was this is where we come up with the Protestant work ethic, right? It's due to religious ethic and the ascetic Protestantism, which I don't understand how those two go together, because both religious ethics in Christianity deal with poverty, and Protestantism is a rejection of like all the garish money spending stuff on the churches and the icons and the gilding and all that, and just making everything very plain and simple, right? So how did a religion that rejects wealth and an ascetic that rejected ostentation produce capitalism, which basically is about wealth hoarding? I just have problems with Weber. I'm basically like, Max, you're a Protestant. I'm pretty sure he was a Protestant. I should probably look that up before I start casting aspersions all over the man. But he's like, oh, well, this is why this is why white Protestant men like me. This is why we're so great, because we came up with capitalism. But let's just find out this really quick. Come on, Google, tell me. Was Max Weber a Protestant? Max Weber. Yeah. Yeah. What is Weber's religion? No, I don't want to know his definition of religion. Did Weber believe in religion? Ugh! All right, well, I'm going to have to check back up on that, because I'm going to, as he was German. I mean, there are some Catholics in German. He could be. But it's interesting here. I'm German sociology. I don't know. I don't see anything about his biography, okay? His religious beliefs. Let's see. Is that a wiki? There's Britannica, Stanford. There's a whole bunch of them. Anyway, it's pretty interesting that it's not declared. Well, yeah, he was a Protestant himself. I think that's like in conflict of interest. I think that should be mentioned in his biographies. But anyway, so the other thing that he thought was that, this value-oriented rationality of Protestantism and Protestant groups was the basis for instrumental rationality, and that this instrumental rationality, the rationality calculation of capitalism. So let me just read out, I think my notes might be a little bit on the bare side. So I will therefore read out what the author said in the book. His argument was that the difference between Western Europe and North America, right, so white men, and the rest of the world, brown people, that enabled capitalism to develop first in these areas was the presence. I mean, he doesn't talk about the exploitation of white people, of people of color, by white people. He doesn't mention the oppressive nature of colonialism and the extraction of wealth from native peoples. He doesn't mention forced labor the exploitation of people's lives, labor, and their lands as fundamental to white men's capitalism. There are all kinds of things. All kinds of things. Weber's leaving out here. I've got a lot of problems with Weber. And this whole thing of, it was just white men being awesome. That's what did it. It wasn't like we were actual like violent, genocidal, oppressive, sex trafficking maniacs. No. It's because we're so close to God. They go on. His argument was that the difference between Western Europe and North America and the rest of the world that enabled capitalism to develop first in these areas was the presence of a specific religious ethic, the tolerance of slavery, aesthetic Protestantism, which allowed for the hoarding of capital and wealth, which indirectly encouraged the development of capitalism, a system in which instrumental rationality / exploitation, genocide, and domination dominates. I'm really not reading exactly what the author's writing here, to be clear. The value-oriented rationality of particular Protestant groups in rationalizing their crimes against humanity for their own personal benefit, wealth-wise, contributed towards the development of instrumental rationality, the rationality calculability of modern capitalism. All right, that is where we're going to leave Weber. We've done a full 1, 2, 3 pages of text in an hour. That's how dense this book is. But I hope y'all are learning something. What is this? I don't know what this is. So I just turn my tablet off here before I end up calling someone accidentally. All right, I'm going to have a little look at the chat, and then I'm gonna get going because this is my show for this week, y'all. I did my research, I prepared my notes, and I talked at you for an hour. So technically, box ticked. Oxford Handbook said that Weber has an unfavorable view of Catholicism. I wouldn't doubt it, given the time period. You're talking about what, the 1860s to the 1920s. There's still a lot of religious bigotry going on white violence there. Let's see. He saw it as ritualistic, magical, bureaucratic, and traditional. Yeah. All right. So he was a Protestant, or at least he was anti-Catholic. And that's kind of funny because this whole ritualistic, bureaucratic, and traditional would be incredibly meaningful by his own definitions. I used to work at a library with called Max Weber, although it was a different guy it was named after, though, but it was quite funny at the time. His mother is a Calvinist. Thank you, the Lucky Wanderer. Appreciate that. His mother was a Calvinist. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, all of this just kind of smacks of white male privilege. If I'm talking, honestly, this is my problem with Weber's. Well, there's a couple problems. All right, let me talk about the problems I have with Weber, and we'll see how it gets addressed later on. Because again, this part of philosophy of social science isn't my strong suit. I'm not a rationalist. I am definitely a positivist. I'm definitely an empiricist when it comes to it, mostly because I find a lot of these things really squishy. And because, a white man says it, therefore it must be true. There's sort of that authority given because of patriarchy and white supremacy, that this Protestant ethic, Protestant people just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, doesn't acknowledge at all the basis, the exploitation, right? Okay, so there was a technological advantage or what it was that gave Europeans an advantage, but they used those for the most horrible ends. Slavery, sex trafficking, destroying families, genocide, just outright stealing other people's countries. And he doesn't acknowledge any of that part of the building of capitalism and wants to just focus on how self-responsible and moral and upright and disciplined and what's another word, thrifty, hardworking, good people, and that's why capitalism. Just please, white man. A white man says it, therefore it must be true. Yeah, that's basically it. But that's how it has been forever, right? Literally where the phrase, the man says no, the man says yes, the man says fill in the blank, comes from that. This idea that you get authority from your skin color or, your genitalia. It's ridiculous to me. Anyway, but we're going to continue on. But Weber obviously created, just like if you don't, I have a lot of problems with what Marx said too, but there are a lot of useful things in Marx that we should understand properly. And because they illuminate patterns of behavior and relations between people. I've got hair somewhere on my face. I don't know where it went now. Anyway, I'll figure it out. However, in order to understand later developments in the neo-Kantian tradition of instrumental rationality, then we have to understand at least, Weber's core ideas and their definitions, because other people will be building on them in the future. All right. Thank you, A to Decay. Mine is an unspoken motto of what's yours is mine, what's mine is mine, the unspoken motto of colonialism. True that. Alrighty dighty, everyone. Okay. Go away. I'm done. That's all you get. That's all we're going to do for today. You can always catch me over on my channel, Kristi, D&D with Kristi, where I'm going to be continuing the saga with my Dragon Heist peeps. You can also go over to our Twitch channel. I ran a one-shot based on Candlekeep, which isn't in here. It's in another room. Otherwise, I'd show you the book. I'll plug the Waterdeep Dragon Heist, though, later on today. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Also, we're doing a fundraiser, Save the Children fundraiser over on Rolling Left, our Twitch channel-based D&D thingy. I don't know. Go to Twitch, search Rolling Left. You can find us there. Next week, Christiosity will be back, and we're having our special fundraisers are around. Actually, I can promote the fundraiser here. While we're here, I can still go on to. Just get rid of this. Go away. PowerPoint slides. All right, let me see. Go fund me. Oh no, it was under my name. Kristi Winters, Save the Children. This is going to be the. I know, because I am a good planner. I pinned the announcement about the fundraiser to my Twitters. So let's just go to my Twitter profile. Go to my pinned tweet. Yay! All right, here it is. I will just drop this in the chat. If you can donate, please do. If you can't, it's fine. Maybe just share it on social media or post it someplace else. I will put it here is in the chat. All right, link to the fundraiser. And you can go ahead and share that around. Even if you can't give, it would be really great if you could just share it on your social media or stop by during the live stream and be positive and encouraging. All right. That is it. I've done the plug. I've done all my stuff. I've done it, and now y'all need to go away, and I'm gonna turn my camera off. So yes, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by, getting nerdy with me. I do appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to. Oh, my hair looks stupid. Appreciate the opportunity to practice not doing verbal pauses. It's good. And until next time, y'all. I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again really soon.